Hello everyone and welcome to the stream. This is Otaku Showboat. Today is Thursday, June 18th, 2020. If you're watching the VODs on YouTube, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if you are so inclined, head on over to twitch.tv/OtakuShowboat to leave a follow to be notified when I go live Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to approximately 1 p.m. US Eastern Time. You can do all of the social stuff through the links below the video, including supporting Pyandon's Mons development at patreon.com/Pyandon and myself at patreon.com/Otaku Showboat. So, we're going to go, I think, straight into the game today. Yeah, there's a few things I did some things off screen between last stream and this stream. Just a few that we need to discuss. In fact, it's such a low amount of stuff, so easy to remember that I've made a list on a document of the things that I did that I could remember at the time. So, if you are part of the Pi community Discord server, you probably already saw a couple of these things because I posted a couple of screenshots of things. But in particular, we'll sort of do this in the order in which I actually did this. Nexelit. As it turns out, after completing this zinc build, which what we did last time. Last time we, put the finishing touches on a zinc build that I had started off screen, and did like all the final logistics work, added the last bits over on this side, added these on this side. What I did off screen was I put all of the output onto the trains, so both the actual molten zinc as well as the zinc plates are now on my train network through all of that. So this is now completed. It is complete. However, I noticed during this whole process that I had a little bit of a problem with Nexelit of all things. Also, the heavy oil was a bit of a problem as well, just primarily because only having one train going back and forth from my heavy oil production wasn't quite cutting it for the actual demand. Here it was pulling in absolutely everything to make the actual molten here in this process, because this is using like 800-ish. I don't even remember how much exactly. It's using a lot of heavy oil overall. But anyway, so the Nexelit was a bit of a problem. And I came up here and I saw, oh hey, this setup could actually do with a little bit of an upgrade. It was pretty much just this, directly casting the cleaned Nexelit. That's all my Nexelit was just cleaned Nexelit into plates. We have access to significantly more steps than that right now, but I decided that I would stop and go into the molten hot air casting from the powdered phase over here, which unfortunately is the step that requires just absolute massive amounts of sand. Yeah, just, massive amounts of sand. So I went ahead and I did that. This part of it only really exists to keep the tailings flowing. This converts tailings into Nexelit. That's this build. This build is just tailings into Nexelit. Tailings gives all of the raw Nexelit here. That's not all. That makes like 3 point something plates per second. That's not the only thing I did, because the other thing that I did was, well, first off, drill heads now exist on the train network. I went ahead and I just made a little bit station out in the middle of nowhere, making drill heads and putting the drill heads onto my train network so that I could have access to said drill heads for mega mines. I found in this map one Nexelit megamine. One entire Nexelit megamine. I was searching and searching and searching all across my base here, everything that has been revealed, and I found a grand total of one Nexelit megamine. I think at some point I may have deleted one with Ore Eraser because it was in my way, thinking that there would be others that have spawned, or that would spawn, but the answer to that is actually only one has actually spawned. Like, of all of the stuff, it's like I've got so much aluminium through the various aluminium patch nodes. I've got lots of titanium nodes. I've got lots of the everything, except two of the most important things that I really need is the being raw coal at eventually, as well as Nexelit. So it's like, oh boy, like I have this one raw coal node, and then a Nexelit thingy all the way up here. Now this mine is at a mining speed of 60 per second. That is the fastest that you can make any building in Factorio without loss. In Factorio, it can only process at the tick rate, so at the UPS rate, and the UPS is by default 60 per second. This, adjusts to the faster tick rate, but 60 per second mining speed is the equivalent of once per tick. And that's how fast it'll go. If we say to do more ticks, it'll keep up 1-to-1 with the tick rate. And Immortal is late. Yes. What has Immortal missed? I'm just going over what I have done off screen, which I finished the zinc onto the train network, saw that I was lacking a little bit in Nexelit, noted that I expanded the tailings Nexelit over here a bit to the phase that requires a ton of sand, and noted that I have put drill heads onto my train network, and have now tapped into a Nexelit megamine, which is now producing, I think it's 72 units of ore per second when you take into consideration productivity. Honestly, that's what actual craft time says is output, 72, because I guess the game can do productivity ticks as well as normal crafting ticks. I don't know. I guess I would think, yeah, because it is simultaneous. They do happen on the same tick, don't they? So it is able to do that, but it cannot process more than the tick rate, faster than the tick rate. So it's limited to a mining speed 60, which is why I don't have this completely surrounded by beacons. Also, the cap is minus 80% on the efficiency here, so of course I have this megamine operating at the limit. Consumption is 500 kilowatts. That is static, irrespective of the actual mining speed, because watts is joules per second. That is the unit there, which means that it is consuming 500 kilojoules per second, real second, like with the tick rate in mind here. If I was going at 2x speed, you can consider that as being as consuming it twice as fast, basically. But in terms of like real time, a single drill head, which I think is 5 megajoules, it lasts 10 seconds. 10 real seconds, if the game was running at normal speed. And in those 10 real seconds, it would produce 600 units of ore plus the 20% productivity bonus. So 72 per second times 10 seconds for 720 units of ore per drill head. This applies, this whole thing applies to every single mega mine that exists, which includes salt mines. So this entire setup applies to salt mines, and I have made use of that. I have definitely made use of that. Now, note, I said this makes 72 per second, right? A red belt's 30. And what I have built here to process this raw Nexelit is built to process 30. One red belt. So I am processing less than half of the output of this megamine. And that is the footprint. That is how much space is needed to process a red belt of Nexelit. And you can see here the big majority of this is here. This is without tailings feedback. Without tailings feedback. Yeah, just no. Just no. This is just purely 30 per second in, ignoring any tailings feedback part of this, because that would just make it even bulkier if you wanted to process more than the 30. If it fed back, it would just reduce the input here, right? This is processing 30 ore, regardless of how you get your ore. That is the footprint of 30 ore, regardless of the method of getting the ore and feeding back tailings and all of that nonsense. It does do the internal loops that are in here of the actual solids. The G1 gets fed back from rejects in here, but otherwise, yeah. And it's a lot of sand. It is over 300 units per sand needed at full bore to process all of this, and it makes like 34 something Nexelit. If I go into here, somewhere in here, I have this build. So this is the build. This is the build without the sand stuff, but yeah, it's 320 units of sand per second required to make 35 plates from 30 raw in the end, thanks to hot air processing. That hot air, I think, is adding 5. I'm pretty sure it is a 1-to-1 by design. I think it's a 1-to-1 by design, but yeah, it's more because hot air is pretty awesome. So I now have all the Nexelit that I will ever need, at least for the moment. Also, I have a beautiful raw coal patch that has spawned. Beautiful, glorious raw coal has spawned in my outskirts. In particular, there's another one right here, and it is glorious and magnificent and beautiful. I just hope and pray I will never have to actually tap them, making use of the standard coal that I still have in the starting area. A reminder that I started this base before vanilla coal was removed from the face of existence for every new map that it has started. Raw coal completely replaces standard coal now in the Pi suite by default. Now, I'm pretty sure that the option to disable that behavior has not yet been added, despite King saying that he was going to be adding that at some point. I'm pretty sure it's still not there. All right. Outside of that, what else? Because I have a list here. Bioreserve mining. That is the next thing. So continuing on with the whole beacon shenaniganry and module shenaniganry, I came down here to tap into this beautiful bioreserve. And yeah, beacons. So bioreserves run on these containers, which, are very, very expensive containers. They require titanium, lead, glass, and steel to make them. And they have a fuel value, and under normal circumstances, it is a 1-to-1 ratio uh, between the containers and the actual samples that are output. However, because it is a fuel value, it is subject to uh, efficiency bonuses, which means that you can actually make it so that 1 equals 5 for the actual containers into samples by reducing the consumption rate. And then mining productivity also takes effect. So instead of 1 to 5, it's then 1 to 5 plus 20%, which is the current mining productivity bonus. So yeah, these containers can now, at this phase of the game, now that I do have modules, they go a long way. They go a very long way. And yes, I am very much exploiting Bob's modules, which are the pure modules, the pure efficiency, the pure speed. So the speed modules don't have drawbacks. The efficiency modules don't have drawbacks. The productivity modules don't have drawbacks when I use productivity modules. That's the main thing there. Just noting that it will be different with vanilla modules on just how good you can set this up. You wouldn't really be able to do speed. Always prefer the efficiency over the speed on these. I just snuck in some extra speed where I could to get extra output there. It's something like, it's over 6 per second of the actual biosample output down here right now. So that's that one. That was that thing. And then what I'm pretty sure is going to make Pyandon very happy is that I have decided to tap into a uranium mine. I have decided to tap into a uranium megamine. Why? Because the uranium megamine only requires gasoline. The uranium megamine requires gasoline, as opposed to straight up mining uranium, which will require sulfuric acid. Gasoline is a much better fluid to use overall, because this is the infrastructure to make the gasoline. Just adding in the tin chromium alloy as well as the titanium tetrachloride in here as your catalysts of this process. They will allow me to mine the full 72 per second of ore out of this, and it looks amazing. By the way, the graphic of this is super sped up. It digs real fast. This corkscrew driller. Yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, I have ore on my train network now. I'm not processing this uranium yet, but I do need the ore. Why do I need the ore? Because I'm going to need the ore for purple science. Yeah, and it's really weird because there's clearly ports for all 4, well, for 3 other inputs on this, as well as the output taking up a slot. Like there's graphics clearly to have the input ports on no matter the rotation of this, but you only get the one input and output for some reason port on this thing to get the gasoline in. So instead of being able to put the gasoline in here, I had to run it around the other side. But anyway, that is the uranium. And then internal fluid box testing. So down here with my oil derricks, I have tested and confirmed that the internal fluid box size on the medium and the small, and I'm assuming all of the other ones as well, oil derricks specifically, have an internal fluid box size set to 500, and I can confirm that that does mean that it will output 500 up to 500 units of oil per derrick with the expected resource density being sufficiently high. So that means I can get 500 per second, basically, per derrick. Yeah, 500 per second per derrick is now the new thing for the small and the mediums. It's per cycle, technically. So if you're using speed modules, it's 500 units per cycle. Yeah, so you can min-max more on them. It's now, without even having speed modules, it's now 3. 2 to 3 per pipe, depends on what you want to max your pipe at. I do 1200 units per second per pipe generally. Others do 1000 units per pipe, in which case that would be 2. In my case, it would be 3 per pipe. So this is a little bit much to have on a single pipe currently, until it gets stealth changed again. But yeah, it's pretty awesome. You can tell, by the way, because well, now there's a few ways. You no longer actually have to just output it into a tank to see the change. You just have to put one segment of pipe in front of the output of the derrick and click on the pipe, and it tells you how much fluid is in the fluid system, and it'll tell you it has 500 units in it, which is fantastic. It is glorious. The game actually tells you how much fluid is in the fluid system, and it lets you flush it out as well. Which, by the way, that's how you can switch to the crude oil, or to the natural gas from the crude oil on these derricks. The Shift G works. It doesn't give you an audible indication that it has switched, but it will switch. The expected resource will change on this, but in order for it to actually output, if you put it powered when you place the building, so if the building was powered to produce oil when you placed it, but you want it to produce natural gas instead, when you shift G, it's not going to start producing natural gas because its internal fluid box is still full of oil, not natural gas, and the game does not want to mix those fluids. So you have to put a pipe segment in front of it, and then click on that pipe segment and hit the X box to flush the fluid system before it will start outputting the natural gas if you started it powered. If it's been unpowered, then you're fine. When you place it down and it starts as crude oil, you can just shift G and it will start producing the natural gas as soon as you power it up. So that all works just fine now. Okay, there was one other thing to discuss before we really get into things today, and that is rocket fuel. So yeah, as it turns out, I'm actually a big fan of the low distillate kerosene. I am really fond of this low distillate kerosene. Just by the way, this is actually really powerful. This thing at Mark II makes 75 units of kerosene per second, which is enough to feed a few, even more than what I have here, for production of rocket fuel, because rocket fuel now is kerosene and oxygen. That's it. It's kerosene and oxygen. This little setup here, it's making something. It's making a few units. I am now fueling my trains with rocket fuel. This will take time to properly, apply to all of my trains. It's gonna take a while for all of the trains to have rocket fuel in them and actually start getting the effects of the rocket fuel. But yeah, my trains are gonna go faster now. Rocket fuel makes vehicles accelerate as well as improves their max speed. So they accelerate faster and go faster, which is just fantastic. I approve. I approve of this thing with the vehicle acceleration of 180% and a top speed of 115%. So they hit top speed faster and they go 15% faster. I mean, that's compared to the baseline Coke, which I'm guessing is just 100-100. So they get there 80% faster to the top speed and then go 15% faster. So yeah, and I have a few units in my Crawdad for whenever I do place down additional trains from here on out, so that I can actually fuel my trains with the rocket fuel from the start. I will note that because rocket fuel has a stack size of 10, overall, my trains will have to go back to refuel more often, because the stack size of Coke, of course, is 500, and you can stick 3 stacks of Coke into a single train. That gives them like over 7,000 megawatts of power available to them. Now they have somewhere like 3,000 units of fuel value in them. But the benefit definitely outweighs having to go back to refuel twice as often as before. Little more than twice as often as before. Because I need that top speed. I really need that top speed. Now, nuclear fuel. Nuclear fuel is a bit of an issue. That's going to require a fuel rod Mark V to make nuclear fuel. That's a bit of a kick in the teeth, honestly. Oh boy, and it's a 1-to-1 as well, which is just, oh my god. It's a 1-to-1. It's 3 yellow cake per Mark V fuel rod. Yellow cake is the final product of the complete uranium processing chain. So yeah, not really worth it. I forget what the nuclear fuel speed increase is. Like, what's the speed acceleration thing? I think it's over 200, like 250 acceleration or something like that, and some really high top speed, 150, I think, top speed, something like that. It is a lot. It'll make things go really fast. Of course, nuclear fuel, I think, is also by default stack size 1, with a gigajoule or gigawatt of fuel value, gigajoule. But anyway, something along those lines. I completely forget. Now, there is also something to be said about looking at the actual fuel rods themselves as fuel. But yeah, I'll leave that for other considerations later on, because this I might think about if I ever do get like 20% powder. The 20% powder isn't all that bad, to be completely honest. It's basic processing without any outside inputs. So the 20% to get the Mark II rods would be useful, maybe, but I have to actually look at what the bonuses on the Mark II rods are to trains. I'm uncertain. I need a, you know what, I can train. If I hover over this, I can't actually hover over those individual things, but I can see that yes, the fuel rods do apply as a valid fuel source for trains. So do coal briquettes. That's another thing. If I put down, what was the building those things were made in? Coal, fuel. Alright, so the fuel rod. Fuel rod Mark II is 125 megajoules, which is better than rocket fuel. by 25%, and it gives a slower acceleration but higher top speed. So 5% faster top speed, slower acceleration. That is better over longer distances. So for any train that has to travel a really long distance, that would be better overall than that getting to the top speed faster. Getting to the top speed faster is better over shorter distances. And I don't think, even though I do have really long distances for a number of trains, that this is ultimately going to be worthwhile across the entirety of the network. I think the average distance that they travel is still going to prefer the other thing, the rocket fuel. Now, Mark III fuel rods is the 40% powder that is significantly more complex. That is, yeah, significantly more work to get the 40% powder. It is 225 megajoules. It's still that 120 top speed, and it's still a decrease overall. But that one might be worth using. It would also make it so that they don't have to refuel as often. Definitely by the time we get to Mark IV here, fuel rods, that is flat out better. But I need my 70% powder for the blah. Yes, for the blah. For the blah 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 blah. There's an item that I need for that. I forget the name off the top of my head. The fermium, yeah, the fermium material, heavy fermium material, needs the 70% uranium powder. So I am going to be making 70% uranium powder. That's the key thing to note here. I am going to have it. It's just I need it for the heavy fermium material, and I don't know how much extra I'm actually going to ever have to do the Mark IV fuel rods. But they are objectively better than the rocket fuel. Then, of course, the Mark V fuel rod is absolutely even better still, but that will require going to Yellow Cake. You will need to go to Yellow Cake now to complete the game, by the way. What is the heavy fermium material used for? Oh, God. So... Come on, excuse me. Oh, right. No, I don't want... I want this heavy fermium material. Gets used in a variety of Mark III buildings, but in particular it is required to go into the higher level circuits as well as into space science. You know, just casually, it's needed for space science. Yeah, it's for a lot of stuff. And C3, C4, yes. Circuit 3s... No, it's not Circuit 3s, it's Circuit 4s. The PCB4 and the Condo, which is the Circuit 4 intelligent unit. So just Circuit 4s is when we really have to worry about it, as well as space science, but also like several Mark III things. Several Mark III things. And a few Mark IVs. So it will get used. And it's highly expensive because it's 70% powder each. Okay. All of that being said, all of that stuff looked at, I think if I go into the high pressure furnace, this is where the briquettes live. Maybe. Where do the briquettes live? I don't... Coal briquette. What do you... Yeah, high pressure furnace. Where are you? There you are. 180 megajoules with no bonuses to speed or anything like that. Stack size 200. Yeah, I will ignore those completely. All right. Today, our goal is to make Dingridos and Oculas. That is the goal. It'll happen very quickly. After which, I really don't know. I have done a lot of planning. I have done a lot of planning and a lot of testing and a lot of looking at the various things. I guess there is technically one more thing to look at really before going into all of this. That is this up here. So remember what I said about the beacon thing applying to salt. Yeah, it applies to salt mines. This salt mine outputs 72 units per second of salt times 2. This ultimately makes 144 units of chlorine each. So I now have a train station up here that I could tack on at least one more of these, if not two, onto, producing 288 units per second of chlorine. If that seems like a low value, it is. For the output here of stuff. And I have looked to see, like, what really is the best option on chlorine. And let me tell you, it's not good. Like, you're just shafted no matter how you decide that you want to get your chlorine on a regular basis. This is gas bladder chlorine. And I have ignored the Tholin-based chlorine for the moment. But yeah, this is gas bladder stuff. It's a few gas bladders. It's a few. It requires all of this nonsense. This is a bigger build than what I've used for bones. By the way, to get 1,000. This one is the blood. So how I'm currently getting blood. This is it. It is significantly larger than guts, which is the same identical build with the same identical stuff. Guts is actually better than blood. Guts is better than blood. We'll get into what I'm missing for purple science. That there's a question there about what am I missing for purple science. We'll get to that. I have that here. I have that here. But basically, that's my to-do list is now stuff that will directly, eventually, lead into some amounts of purple science. It is a lot more than I was thinking it would be. We are a lot further than I was thinking. But one thing that I did do among all of this, so I want to get the Dingrido and the Ocula, which is only at this point in time blocked by this calmodulin binding mutant peptide, and that's going to need pineal glands. I am going to bioscaffold / bioprint these pineal glands to get my initial CBMPs. I am going to bioscaffold these at the start because these pineal glands are scrondrix, and scrondrix, yeah, I'm not particularly prepared to set that up because I think that the scrondrix are one of those great alien sample creatures / alien sample 3s. I was looking at alien sample 3s, and that is going to require graphene. Graphene into alien sample 3s. This is a lot of graphene, but I was looking at what actually constantly consumes the alien sample 3s. Like, what constantly consumes alien sample 3s? And the answer is perfect samples for utility science. That is the only constant required consumer of alien sample 3s. The rest of the uses of alien sample 3s are to produce your first versions of a lot of other stuff and to do upgrading of modules into like Mark 2/3 in some cases. But as it turns out, my goal being 1 science per second for all of the sciences, including utility science, as it turns out, I did the breakdown here. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's it's a whole 0.01 great alien sample per second to feed into my 1 utility science per second.